السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم وهو بالمؤمنين رؤوف رحيم. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد: يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. صدق الله العظيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا نبي الله. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا حبيب الله. I pray that you are all doing extremely well and fasting in this most unique Ramadan in a manner which is enhancing you and your closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your bodies will have adjusted by now to the fasts, and now it is the time to really concentrate on connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to His book, to His Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam, and to really begin to increase the worship that you will be undertaking. Remember, in the month of Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed a very special night. For that special night, there needs to be a lot of training and a lot of rigor before we reach it and before we arrive at it. So now is the time to begin increasing slowly in anticipation of that particular night, which will be towards the end of the month of Ramadan. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala assists and helps us all. In our journey through the blessed Qur'an, we have come to Surah An-Nisa. Surah An-Nisa, its period of revelation, follows immediately after Surah Al Imran. So, Surah Al-Baqarah was from the first and beginning part of the Hijrah, or after the Hijrah, up to the second year. The revelation of Surah Al Imran was between the two battles, between Badr and Uhud, which was from the second year after Hijrah to the third year after Hijrah. Now, from the third year after Hijrah to about the fifth year is the revelation of Surah An-Nisa. Its topics, they continue from what we learnt in Surah Al-Baqarah and what we learnt in Surah Al Imran. At the time, the Prophet ﷺ had three key tasks, three things which he had to simultaneously keep an eye on. One was this new community that was formed. In the first years, it was a matter of changing people's minds, making them understand that Islam has its own system by which it allows people to flourish. By the time they came to the period of revelation of Surah Al Imran, it was a matter of comparing to other systems that were there, namely the Jews and also of the mushrikeen who had been there for centuries. Now it was the task of the Prophet ﷺ to develop his own community. The foundations had been set. They even had battles. So they were now an established society. So the Prophet ﷺ's task was to guide them and this flourishing people, to set them the rules by which they could further develop themselves. Secondly, the Prophet ﷺ was in this war of morals with the mushrikeen, with the Arabs at large, and also with the Ahlul Kitab, that the Prophet ﷺ had to make these Muslims understand that what the Prophet ﷺ had was from Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. Its history was far richer than the Arabs who claimed that they were on the moral high ground. The mushrikeen, they said that we are followers of Sayyidina Ibrahim Khalilullah. But the Prophet ﷺ was trying to make the Muslims understand that what we have, it goes beyond and further back from Sayyidina Ibrahim Khalilullah, from Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. The idea of worshipping the one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that the believers, they were the torchbearers of this prophetic knowledge and way of life. The Prophet ﷺ had to clash with the Yahud and the Nasara, who said that they inherited from their prophets. So there was this fight going on between these different civilizations. Then the third and more important aspect that the Prophet ﷺ had to deal with was the spreading of this new deen, was propagating it to new places, ensuring that the benefit of the last and final messenger ﷺ reaches the four corners of this globe. So these are themes which are found within the ayat of Surah An-Nisa. These three tasks that the Prophet ﷺ had: establishing the community, ensuring that those communities that were already there, that they were taken care of in the sense that their questions were answered, and that this system was seen as a superior system to anything that they could offer. And at the same time, growing the community, allowing new people to enter into this beautiful deen. Where Surah Al-Baqarah's base is set with different topics, those topics are elaborated upon in Surah An-Nisa. We had the organization of family that was introduced as a building block for this most beautiful society that the Prophet ﷺ was creating. The community needed to know more about what it is that makes that society stronger and firmer. And one thing is about the organization of family, the main building block, that if the family unit is strong and firm and its guidelines are set, then slowly that is replicated from house to house, and ultimately the whole of that society then becomes one which is ideal. Who is responsible for the most weakest, the orphans who were not in that family unit? Who would be responsible for them? So those are some of the topics that are tackled in Surah An-Nisa. Inheritance laws were introduced in Surah Al-Baqarah. They are further elaborated, that as for development of the family, to bring family legacy into it. The idea that you bequeath a particular thing to the next generation, or that your estate is to be divided, that it shouldn't be up for people to plunder, but rather it should go into the family, and how that is to happen and occur. How to dispute and to reconciliate, again, from the family unit, that when disputes arise in the family unit, how that reflects on society. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sets out the rules of how to do that. And then a broader theme is developed there about reconciliation amongst people. Cleanliness is emphasized, plus both cleanliness of the heart and the internal, as well as a physical cleanliness. We have warnings that are given to Muslims to not follow the examples of the Ahlul Kitab. That when you are given a set of rules, a set of laws, then abide by them, follow them. Because the Ahlul Kitab before you, they had ahkam, they had rules. And they chose to ignore them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them see the sunset that they saw. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want that for the believers. We are told and warned that don't be like them. Don't fall into the traps that they fell into. On the back end of Uhud, a balanced conflict. Remember, the Muslims were temporarily defeated in Uhud. This was not a permanent state. That when the Prophet ﷺ's instruction was not followed, and for a small period in the battle, the mushrikeen gained ground. The Prophet ﷺ and the companions, they retreated, only for them to regroup and then to return back and see the end of the mushrikeen. This was not a battle which the Muslims lost. Rather, it was the beginning of a further victory. And it is a very balanced battle that took place. Often it's cited as being a loss for the believers, but those who are aware of the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ know that how the Prophet ﷺ regrouped the companions and how they did pursue the mushrikeen only for them to have escaped. The Prophet ﷺ's struggle with the scheming tribes that are around. Now these tribes, they saw what happened at Uhud and they realized that this strength that the Muslims had, it could be weakened. There was a chip in the armor and they felt that they could manipulate this and they could use this and they could leverage against the believers, against the mu'mineen. We see practical solutions, certainly in difficult times, of how tayammum is used as an example of when there is shortage of water, how to deal with that particular matter. There is also the prayer of fear, that how to pray in jama'ah when you are in battle or you have a fear of a particular thing. The Banu Nudair, a tribe of the Yahud that were settled in Medina, they are used as an example. These were individuals who, despite having contracts in place with the Prophet ﷺ, with the believers, they chose to ignore aspects of them. They chose to try and fool the believers, that we've entered into agreements with them and they will abide because their rules tell them that they must abide by all contracts. So they felt that we will not uphold our side and maybe the believers will be fooled by this. So they are used as an example. Their schemes of overthrowing the Prophet ﷺ and even trying to assassinate the Prophet ﷺ. This was the background to this particular surah. Uhud had given them hope, and they also, like the tribes that were around Medina, the Jews were trying to now find a way of expelling the believers, the mu'mineen. The hypocrites are dealt with in these verses too, that they are in the worst position as far as the believers were concerned, because they were in and amongst them, and their loyalties didn't lie with the mu'mineen. They lay elsewhere, either with the tribes or with the mushrikeen in Mecca. So we are continually told to invite them to the haqq, to invite them to the truth, and to not neglect the fact that we have to deal with these people. We have to deal with anybody who, in their mind, may want to stifle us and kill us, but still we have laws that we are governed by. So those are set out in these particular verses. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins this particular surah with Ya ayyuhan nasu ttaqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum min nafsin wahida. That, O people, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fear your Lord, alladhi khalaqakum min nafsin wahida, who's created you from one single soul. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the unity of humanity, talking about the fact that nobody, as far as being a human being is concerned, as far as being a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is concerned, is exempt from the mercy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows. We are all sustained by Him. Ittaqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum. We're all created by Him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is now broadening this message not just to Yahud and the Nasara, not just to the Mushrikeen, but to all of creation, to all of the world. And as I said, that this was a time when the mu'mineen are now spreading and new people are coming into the fold of Islam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses them in this particular fashion, in this manner. Notice how it is related to the verses before and how miraculous the nature of the blessed Qur'an is. There are people who say that the Prophet ﷺ made the Qur'an himself. But we know from historical fact that when the revelation was, it was in a different order. And as we have it now in front of us, it is in a different order. The Prophet ﷺ must have had exceptional memory. In fact, he would have supernatural powers which would enable him to order the Qur'an in this particular fashion whilst it is being revealed, and at the same time he is trying to juggle and trying to say where these verses are. Certainly not. This is a miraculous book from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ, under instruction from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, was saying where each of these verses should be placed, because this is where their rightful place is. Nevertheless, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses all of humankind and tells them that let us unify on this point, that we are all the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At the very least, we are creation. We're not doing anything by ourselves. There are individuals who don't believe in their deity of some sort. They don't believe in a creator. But even they cannot deny this fact, that they are not the creators. That it is not due to them that the rules that we find in physics, for example, or the rules that are set by which our world is running by, they are not the creators of them, and they will be the first to admit that. They have no explanation where they come from. So at the very least, we can come to this particular point, that we are all in one boat in that sense. We are all created. We are all made from somewhere. Come to this particular point, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, according to the believers, is the one who is sustaining us. At the very least, you know that you are not being sustained by yourselves. This is not of your doing. Rather, this is a system that is in place. You can believe it that there is nothing there, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one at work as far as believers are concerned. The arguments for atheism or against atheism, or to contradict atheism or to answer them, there are many, and they are found throughout the blessed Qur'an. At the moment, it is not discussion here, but rather it's just an acknowledgement that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the power that is above you, that is sustaining you, that is above anything that you know of or that you can comprehend, that you don't have a full grasp of, that is the power that is maintaining this particular world. So we start with Ya ayyuhan nasu ttaqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum min nafsin wahida. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, you are from one individual, you are of a single type. Now, once you are together in this, then the next part of this address, inshallah, will take hold. We are told that this is also how a family is formed. So this address again is to the believers in particular. That, oh believers, that family unit that you have, it's essential as far as your society is concerned. So we have multiple readings of the blessed Qur'an. It depends on who is reading it, and to benefit from the thing that is most beneficial for them. Again, for the believers, it's saying slightly a different thing. We believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's our sustainer. He is the one who will give us and grant us everything. He is saying that He's created you from one man and one female. He is the one who has given you these relationships. And it is He who says that it is this relationship that keeps the society together. That is why in the verses that follow, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows the family unit to grow. That a man is allowed to marry up to 4 wives, if the need be. If there are individuals in society who don't have the support, who don't have a family that supports their everyday life, then a man who is able to be just between individuals, between families, is allowed to take the weaker ones and expand the family in this particular manner. The verses through to 6 talk about this particular unit. Verses 7 through to 14, they go on to an in-depth look at inheritance and how the family can be supported from generation to generation, that how inheritance is something which can pass down. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sets those rules out in order for a systematic way of passing on from one generation to the next generation wealth which is accumulated. There are many things that can be said about the inheritance law as far as Islam is concerned, but there are three main features which I'll briefly talk about now, which underpin how that system works. Firstly, the one who is in need is prioritized over an individual that is not needing as much. For example, a father would normally have a lot more honor as far as Islam is concerned. If one was to ask that who has more honor, a child or a parent, a father, everybody will answer that it is the father. For the father has many, many rights as far as Islam is concerned. But when we look in inheritance, the father would only inherit 1/6. Would only inherit 1/6. Whereas a son, in comparison, would take the lion's share of what a father would leave. So, where is the justice behind this? Well, the answer is that it is about need. The one who needs more will be allocated more. That a son would normally be at the beginning of his life. It would be somebody who is active and responsible for a lot of things. Whereas a father of a deceased would be older, obviously, and towards the end of their life, where their concentration will not be on this dunya, but their concentration will be on the akhirah. It will be on the next world. So they are only given a small portion, whereas a son who is going to live his life is given a far greater portion of the inheritance. A second rule is that of how close somebody is. That when somebody is related by blood, the closer they are, the more rightful they are for inheritance. For example, a father will inherit, but a grandfather will not inherit, because the father is closer to the deceased than a grandfather is. Somebody who is a full brother will inherit rather than somebody who is a cousin, for example. The one who is closer will be inheriting because they are closer to that individual. Family ties, closeness then comes into it. A third feature is being proportionate. That is not always a solution to divide things equally and give to people. You might think equality or adl in that sense seems the more logical and best thing to do, but it is not always the case. If you imagine that there is a wall, say about 1.5 meters tall, and you've got 3 individuals, they are standing behind this wall. One is shorter, the other one is of medium height, and the other one is of full height, say is up to the edge of the wall. If you were to help them and assist them in order to look over this wall, and you were to allocate them a stool of equal length, you will still find that the one who is taller would be able to see over, the one who is in the middle would maybe see, and the one who is below will not see at all, still. But you were trying to be just by giving them something which is equal. In equal amounts, you were giving them in order to achieve a particular purpose. We realized that giving an equal amount may not necessarily be enough. In fact, what should happen is that the shorter individual should be given a larger stool, and the one in the middle, a middle-sized one, and the taller one, given a shorter one. Only then will they all 3 of them be able to see over the wall equally. So it's about being proportionate. Now, the role that is given to a male in society, the society that is being formed in these verses, in these ayat, the role that is given to a man is very different to the role that is given to women. Those roles are explored in this particular surah as well, which we will inshallah come and talk about. But nevertheless, the role that a man has is mainly financial. So the portions that are given are appropriate to the function of that individual, of that person. So men usually take more. There are occasions when women will take more, but they are they are exempt examples, or they are very few examples of that occurring or happening. Nevertheless, the rule is being proportionate, that the amount that is allocated should reflect the function of that individual as far as society is concerned. The rules as far as inheritance are concerned are explained from verse 7 through to verse number 14. Verse 15 to 18, it talks about staying away from sin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إنما التوبة على الله للذين يعملون السوء بجهالة ثم يتوبون من قريب. Here, rule of tawbah is given. That the tawbah is that we leave any bad actions that we do. Tawbah is necessary from every bad action. Everything which is haram, which is not allowed, which is displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a mu'min must do tawbah from each one. It is not enough for an individual to say, I will do tawbah from one thing whilst I carry on and continue doing the other thing. Tawbah is essential for every single mistake that you make. A person, for example, if he is taking drugs and at the same time not praying, there is a tawbah required for not praying, and there is a tawbah required for taking drugs. These are two separate tawbahs. And a tawbah which is sincere and honest has 4 features to it. Firstly, that the individual who is committing that particular wrong, he must stop that wrong. He must make an active effort in order to stop that particular sin. And if he doesn't do that, then that is not a tawbah. So a person can feel that, yeah, I need to stop this particular habit. I need to stop because Allah and His Messenger have forbidden this. But then if he continues to do that particular act, then this is not going to be a tawbah. So the first rule is that you must stop that particular sin. If it is the drugs that you are into, then stop those. You've got to stop before even tawbah begins, before it starts. It's a condition of this tawbah. Secondly, you have to be ashamed of that particular act. Yes, there will be people who stop and say, well, actually it was okay, I should have done it, I should have continued. There was no effect of it. No, that sin has a bad effect on you. It's a topic for another day, but certainly it will have an effect on your character, it will have an effect on your behavior, it will have an effect on all the other things you do. How many times do you hear this? That an individual says that, yes, I should be doing something good, but I'm doing something else wrong, so that will have an impact on this good thing. They say, I do lots of bad things, so what difference will it make if I do one good thing? Look, this is the negative aspect of that particular sin. You have to be ashamed of it. You have to say that, look, this should not be done. For the sake of it itself, I should not do this. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't make something forbidden when it is not qabih in itself, when it is not wrong in itself. It is wrong and it is something you should be ashamed of. So the second condition of tawbah is to look at that particular sin and say, look, I've stopped it and I'm ashamed of it. That this was not a good thing that I was doing. Thirdly, to make a promise not to reoffend. Not to reoffend. That I'm not going to go towards it again. So once you've stopped, you're ashamed of it, and you make a vow that I will not go and do this particular act again. That will be a sincere tawbah. That will be an honest tawbah. A tawbah which is between that individual and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a tawbah that when a person performs this particular tawbah and does it in this manner, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this ta'ib, the one who has asked for forgiveness, is as though that sin does not exist anymore. So that is the power of this type of tawbah. To say that I am not going to do this again after already stopping it and being ashamed of it. There is an additional condition which is concerning other people. That if you have wronged another individual, and correcting it will make things better. So if you have been backbiting, if you have been slandering somebody, rather than just going up to them and say, this is what I've been saying about you, in order to upset them even more, to think whether that is going to rectify the matter, whether it's going to make it better or not. Be good to that individual, rather than just blurt out what it was. So think beforehand that what I'm going to do, is it going to correct this matter? If it's going to correct this matter, then to go and seek that person's forgiveness and let them know what it is. If it's money or anything that you owe them, then to give that back. That will be a condition of that tawbah. That tawbah must be one that enhances your connection to that individual. Sometimes a person will not be forgiven immediately. But if that tawbah is sincere, then over time, that individual, the hurt that they feel will diminish. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it diminish as you pray for that. Say, if you truly want to connect to an individual and you are sorry to them and you want their forgiveness, then you will ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to soften their heart towards you. As you do this dua, then be sure that over time, as that person sees that no harm is coming from you, that they will soften their heart towards you. Maybe what you did is a huge mistake. Maybe it is even bigger than to be forgiven in this dunya. Well, you can still pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I have done tawbah from this particular sin. I have wronged this individual. I have wronged this person. And I am stopping from this now. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is still not happy with me. But in the akhirah, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, spare me all the blushes. Spare me the punishment. Spare me the difficulty that I will have there. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm sure through His sincerity, will change that heart on the day of judgment. That individual will not have an animosity towards that person. In the akhirah, when he sees that this person is honest and sincere, when that sincerity will come forth, it will become absolutely clear that this person is honest in their claim. So there is no need to say, I tried to ask for forgiveness, that person hasn't forgiven me, therefore I am going to continue doing what I'm going to do. No, that is not asking for forgiveness. Forgiveness is that you stop what you are doing, that you don't repeat it, and whether that person forgives you or they don't, you continue doing what is good and what is right. You continue to pray for that individual if you are honest and sincere. It doesn't matter what that person thinks or does. It doesn't matter, because it is not their tawbah, it is your tawbah. It is, the onus is on you to do what is right and what is correct. Anyway, ليست التوبة للذين يعملون السيئات حتى إذا حضر أحدهم الموت قال إني تبت الآن. When it's too late and doing tawbah at that particular occasion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, then it's too late. The tawbah's doors will be closed upon a person's death. Whatever you need to do, you need to do now. You need to make that promise now, that this sin that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have highlighted to me, I want to get rid of it, I want to eliminate it. And then to take those steps in order to eliminate it. If it concerns a person, then to talk to that individual and to try to correct matters with them. We then come to the rights of women in particular. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about that they have a nasib, they have a portion from it, that they are not pieces of property themselves. Rather, women are given the right to own property. They are told that they have their own agency in order to manage their own affairs. So verses that deal with this particular view continue from the ones that were earlier. Verses 22 through to 25 talk about forbidden marriages. Again, this was connected, traditionally, this was connected to inheritance. That in order to consolidate the family, what some people would do was that they would marry their father's wives. So anyone who the father may have married, when the father would pass away, in order for that inheritance to remain within the family, they would marry the widow of their father. Obviously, it wasn't their own mother, but nevertheless, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sets out the rules as far as who you can and cannot marry. The muharramat are mentioned over here. Other than that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permits marriage, and that being the cornerstone, if you like, of the society, and that is the overall theme that is running through these particular verses. We then come to verses 26 through to 31. We are told about not stealing people's wealth, that inheritance is a legitimate and proper way of earning, but that doesn't mean that you begin to steal the wealth of others, certainly the orphans or the weaker in society, to trample on them, that this wealth isn't everything. Yes, it is important as a function of life. It's important for life to function, that you have this wealth, and to gather it and to plan for yourself. But that doesn't mean you become so greedy that you start to take and steal from other people. Verses 32 through to 42 talk about the roles of men and women in society. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that both men and women have their own roles to play as far as this deen is concerned. Unfortunately, the way that things have gone is that men have dominated a lot of the fields, and a lot of time the male-led groups and families and tribes, they often trample over the rights that women have. Now, unfortunately, it's come to such a place where we have Muslim women who are now seeking refuge elsewhere. They're seeking refuge sometimes with other systems and organizations which advocate feminism. Now, I know feminism is a very vast term, but the nasty type of feminism that is, we don't need men at all. In society, we can function by ourselves at all. And every aspect is related back to this power struggle. Look, that is going to be very toxic for a believer, for a mu'min. As far as we're concerned, that there is no life without the other. There is no life for a man without women in his life. And there is no life for women without men in their life. That is why the whole of the surah is concentrating on this idea of marriage and this idea of parity, this idea that men and women, they are the cornerstones as far as society is concerned. If a family with both parents having their correct roles are seen by children, then those children will acquire those values. They will then pass on those values, a bit like the wealth that is being passed on from generation to generation. Those values will be built upon. But if at the very beginning you have this clash between a mother and a father, that clash will cause havoc in places that you cannot imagine. Those children will see things and they will pass on them through their behaviors, through their mannerisms, thinking that that is how life is. Certainly not. A believing household should not be like that. They should work together, each recognizing their own roles. It shouldn't be that they are competing with each other as far as roles are concerned, or to say that you get this and I don't get this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَتَمَنَّوْا مَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بِهِ بَعْضُكُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Don't desire what the other one is getting. Don't desire the fadl and the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the other. لِلرِّجَالِ نَصِيبٌ مِمَّا اكْتَسَبُوا وَلِلنِّسَاءِ نَصِيبٌ مِمَّا اكْتَسَبْنَ. What the men will earn, they will see the reward. They will reap the rewards of it. And what the women earn, they will reap the rewards of it. They should not be trying to compare one to the other. They are both different roles. Each will be rewarded in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This clash, it shouldn't be occurring. It shouldn't be happening. So the roles of men and women in society are explained in these verses. We then come to verse 58 through to 75. It talks about being proud of what you have. O mu'mineen, O believers, recognize these rules that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set out. Be proud that He has granted and given you this. That He has made you from this final nation that will be an exemplary nation to all of those that are around. Be proud of this, and don't be like the people of the past. Don't be like the people of the book who rejected many of the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many of His favors, they gave them up. And what did they get in return? Their end was not good. On the way that they are is not good. So, O mu'mineen, O believers, stick to the rules that you have. Stick to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, and then you will see yourselves prospering in this dunya. The munafiqeen, we are told about them. They are told that, O munafiq, make yourself clear. Whether you are with the mu'mineen or whether you are against the mu'mineen, warnings are given to them that you will be in the worst place in this dunya and in the akhirah. How and what kind of life is this? How can you live in this particular manner, where your inside is different and your outside is different? Who are you trying to deceive? That is not a way to live. O munafiq, or the one who has a hypocrisy in his heart, look at your life yourself. Be honest to yourself at least. Be a believer or disbelieve if that is what you choose. But be clear yourself. This is not a way to live this particular life. And in the akhirah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will deal with you. It will be of no use to you then as well. So a life which is full of deception in this dunya is not going to be of benefit to you, and it's not going to be benefit to you in the akhirah either. Verses 72 through to 126 talk about these hypocrites, and we are encouraged to deal with them, but not to believe them entirely. Deal with them as they are supposed to be dealt with, kindly and continually invite them towards Islam, invite them towards what is good. We are told not to pay too much attention to them, but to pay attention to those who are in need. Who are those in need? They are explained in verses 127 through to 147. They are the weak in society. They are the orphans. They are the women who have been widowed. They are mothers. They are not the hypocrites. The ones who are craving your attention. The ones who are wanting you to waste your time on them. Don't spend your time on them, but look towards the weaker ones. Look towards the ghuraba and the masakeen, and spend your time with them. Look to encourage them in this dunya. Look to encourage them in this deen. Work on them, and that will make you a better society as a whole. Muslims are told to be firm to your principles. Know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you a complete way. It is not missing in any single field that you require and that you need. This is a message from your Lord who created you. He knows you. He knows everything that you are about. He's not going to abandon you just like this. Again, the message of the Qur'an is connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has given you everything that you require and that you need. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps us all to engage with the blessed Qur'an, to understand the meanings of the ayat and the general ethos of the blessed Qur'an. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala aids and helps us all. Wa akhiru da'waya anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.